Some of the news which may have been missed out in the last few weeks due to various news pieces across the world is the fact that over 150 young people in Scotland signed a letter against assisted suicide. I'm delighted today to welcome two of those who have signed the letter and to discuss the reasons why they did so. So welcome Jamie McGowan here today, a veteran of the church chat scene, and debutant James Bundy. So James, why were you keen to sign this letter?
Well, when the legislation was put forward, a lot of young people that I know were concerned by the legislation, and I thought it would be good to get a group of young people together to show that we were against this bill. So I contacted Jamie and many other friends to get this letter together. The letter states clearly that a society which legalises euthanasia is a society which does many things, one including threatens the integrity of life. Legislation does not value life. Life is granted to us, and any society or any state which tries to say that life has different values is wrong, and the letter tries to make that pretty clear. Second one is the more the legal side, which Jamie will know more of, but it's how euthanasia, you only need to look at the different countries like the Netherlands, where pressure is put on to end life rather than invest in social care. And I believe, and so do the people that signed the letter, that society should be investing in social care rather than taking the easier option.
Yeah, I mean, proponents, Jamie, of euthanasia will turn and say, well, you're young people, there's less chance of you being in a situation where you're comatose or suffering or needing end-of-life treatment and maybe want euthanasia. What do you say to those people who maybe would suggest that young people don't have the same understanding of the issues?
Well, I think it's always a bad motive when it's a bad notion to say that young people shouldn't have a voice because they're not implicated currently. They will be one day. We all grow old. But I mean, it's also the young people who will be the doctors who will be implicated in these things. This idea of euthanasia, generally speaking, always breeds malpractice. It always breeds situations where doctors don't want to be involved. There's a lot of conscientious objection happens, and then it's not done properly by the people who do want to do it. There's not enough facility for it. I think it's in Flanders, in the Belgian region of Flanders. A lot of doctors don't want to be implicated in it, but it still flourishes. Euthanasia still flourishes. So you've got, I think it's you've got 64% of cases in a study. The euthanasia went ahead without a palliative care consultant being consulted, and then there was another in 55% of cases where nurses did it instead of doctors, which is again illegal. And so they always try to say there's plenty of safeguards, it's very safe. The worst part about that study is that 88% of cases didn't have a written request for euthanasia. Right? So we talk about this coercion. It's something, when you put something, an option in there for something quite horrific like that, then it's going to flourish. Euthanasia will become the norm. And in a society especially, we're talking about mental health constantly. We're talking about mental health problems, we're talking about suicide prevention, it's a big problem for men. The last thing we want is we're against suicide, we must put a cause of prevention, but either way, here's legal, here's a legal way for you to do that. There's an expressive function of law. Law has an expressive function. It says a lot about it shapes and forms how we think and how we believe, and it's important that the law has to reflect the dignity of life. It has to reflect how we treat our patients, and it has to reflect the kind of Hippocratic values of medicine, ultimately. That we should be trying to heal the patient, we shouldn't be trying to end their life or bring them any harm.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, James, yourself, why is the political situation in Scotland, why is there those who are still in favour of this and still pushing this? I'm aware there are a small working group who are against it in Holyrood at the minute, but For your understanding, why is there still people who, given the facts we've mentioned here, still pushing this legislation?
I think it's so-called liberalism, the push to try and allow an individual to decide what they want to do with their life. But as we've seen with the other forms of so-called social liberalisation, it actually means marrying an individual to the state. It's not liberalism at all. We see with divorce rates, an individual is married to the state rather than married to a partner. Abortion, again, is just the state allowing the life, or allowing the state to determine when a life can end. And I think it's just another further push in that direction for the state to take greater control in our life. Anything that undermines the family is what I think the social liberals try and do. And one of the things that unites a family is looking after those in our family who are sick. And it is tough, it's challenging, but it's what unites the family. Tough times do unite the family, and that's one of the reasons why I think the state wants to legalise euthanasia. I think it is to undermine the family, say you don't have to go through these tough times, you can take the easy option, completely disregarding life and completely disregarding the family.
I mean, in terms of like the viewpoint across Scotland at the minute, I mean, what has there been any surveys taking place, or is this coming top down as opposed from bottom up?
I think it is. I think in many senses people see a sort of compassionate element to it, and they, it's worth a sort of meeting of the minds, and you can say I understand that, but there's a lot more to be risked if you allow this. We need to push for more palliative care. We need to push for better palliative care. Ultimately, people understand and have an inherent sadness when they see someone they love that suffers so much. I've heard many people say the same thing in my own family and stuff, and it's just it's something that you can't. Well, put it this way: medicine is necessarily pluralistic, right? It's a pluralistic profession where you have very different ideas and approaches, and the legal system in medical law fosters a sort of diversity of ideas, so that a doctor can try various treatments without being worried about being prosecuted or whatever. And because of that, it needs lots of new things to, new techniques, new treatments. And we need that. If we have euthanasia, we're just going to be euthanizing all the patients who, otherwise we could be treating, could be finding cures for. It's going to significantly reduce incentives to care. And, as Francis Bacon puts it, he that will not try new remedies can expect new evils. And I wouldn't say that's incorrect.
But yet again, you're seeing in Holyrood when this presumably will pass eventually, if you're going by the tide of each vote, each attempt goes up and up and up. Is the battle lost ultimately, James, or do we think we can still continue to make the public aware of the issues that are in place?
I don't think it is lost. I think, as Jamie said, we have to make the argument for greater social care, greater investment in social care. And again, when it comes to the abortion debate, ending the two-child benefit cap as well. As studies have shown, mothers are undergoing an abortion because they can't afford a third child. I think that's wrong as a society, and I think it's further proof that both euthanasia and abortion are the state trying to save money, as sad as that might sound. The state, I see it as a business who tries to save money, and euthanasia and abortion allows the state to save money on both occasions, and it completely disregards life. I think we have to make the argument that life is worth much more than money. It's worth much more than balancing the books. And if we make the point of, if we invest in early years childhood and invest in social care, people might be opposed to abortion and euthanasia even if it were legal. But hopefully by making the case we stop it becoming legal in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's that case of, as we're seeing, recent story of the slip and the slide in legislation, the purposes of legislation. You're talking about the pro-choice debate, and currently in the UK there's a debate just now about the woman who has learning difficulties and is being unfortunately forced by a judge who's taken a legal position on this that she should have an abortion. So, given this is a very developing story in a sense, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, the mantra's, it changed a bit. It's the silence, the deafening silence from the other side. In the pro-choice, who are all talking about choice and autonomy. This woman, desired to have a child. She did not want to have an abortion, and the courts, enforced her to do so. That's not choice. That's not choice. That's a force. And that I've seen a few, like 1 or 2 tweets. That's about it, from people who are on the other side say this is also outrageous, right? We're pro-choice, blah blah blah. But for the most part, it's been silence, and sometimes support. And it's like, oh well, she had this problem, this, that, the next thing. The mantra changes. They'll only call it out when it's not in their favour. It's when you kind of shows really that the kind of socially liberal decalogue that's kind of accepted now in society. It's apolitical almost. It's not neutral. Liberalism isn't neutral. It's it's one-sided. It has an agenda, and when it actually gets its way, it doesn't. It keeps itself quiet. And this is a sad case of that, and it's actually going to cost the life of an unborn child. Yeah.
How does that inform the debate on euthanasia? Obviously, looking at how far and how extreme that's went from the original 1967 Abortion Act, how, in your mind, James, how would that pave out with regards to euthanasia? Would it be something like Belgium, for example?
Well, yes. I thought the United Kingdom got rid of the death penalty, but this week the courts have sentenced an unborn child's death sentence, and makes it even worse that this child is completely innocent. There's no crime against this child, and there is a crime against the child, the abortion, but the child itself has done absolutely no crime. But Jamie said earlier in the case studies, was it 88% didn't have written consent, which is extremely worrying. If the courts can issue a death sentence to an innocent baby, then what can they do to somebody who's extremely sick and a cost to the state themselves? I think it's the slippery slope arguments. Once you start, where do you stop? I think once euthanasia is legalised, if it does, we'll see it increasingly be undertaken without the permission of the individual, which is extremely sad and worrying.
Yeah, it is very worrying indeed. I mean, going forward as a group, you've got 150 plus people who've signed this. How do you see the next attempt in Parliament, or the next attempt to legislate for this in this country? Do you see a more formalised group of young people, or do you see, again, pressure on political parties and individuals? How do you see it?
Well, it was pretty organic. What we're doing is pretty grassroots, so there's no solid plans until really something happens. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to. I think there should be some sort of solid action, protests and whatnot. Which was very effective in England. We saw lots of people turning up, especially those who are disabled, turning up to say, my life has value. There's been times when I wanted to end it, and I'm glad I didn't. And we could do something like that in Scotland. That would absolutely be almost necessary if we want to try and fight it. It is a war. It's not just a bunch of battles. So we have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, that's a very positive way to end this interesting discussion. People who have intrinsic value should be supported always, and I'd like to thank you both for coming in to talk to us today about this issue. And for those who are watching and they'd like to see the letter that the young people signed, we'll post that with this video. And as always, keep in touch with those who are pro-life, especially against euthanasia, and check out Care Not Killing, which is an organisation which is established to fight the growing demands for euthanasia in this country. So we very much hope this will never happen and that all life will be kept safe. So thank you for joining us.